Welcome to the EverydayFI podcast. I'm your host, Meghan Combs, a personal finance junkie who learned from all of life's money mistakes. Come with me as I explore the incredible stories of those on the path to financial independence. Plus, I'll teach you how to start your own journey. Are you ready? All right. Thanks for joining us today. I am here with Craig and Julia, who are on the financial independence journey. Welcome, you guys. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, tell us about you.
So I'm Craig.
I'm Julia.
And we're a married couple, been married almost just about 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
I guess at this point we'd be considered financially independent. I work extremely part-time hours.
I still have a full-time job, but I can quit anytime, and I'll be quitting like in 2 years probably.
Whenever her boss retires.
Yeah.
I think
That's amazing. Well, welcome and thank you so much for being here. My first question is, how did you find financial independence and what drew you to it?
Oh, it was about 7 years ago.
Yeah, somewhere.
I was very depressed at job, and I just basically asked Craig, like, how long do I need to keep working like this? And he started looking into it, and he developed a plan, and we have followed it. And
Yeah, we always talked about retiring early, but without a clear idea of what that meant. I always thought the idea of like, okay, well, if you're saving money, that means you might be able to retire when you're 50-ish something or 60 or whatever it might be, without any clear idea of the numbers. And once we were married, with our combined incomes, I mean, we were saving like 3/4 of our pay, and we were just thinking like, well, geez, this is a lot of money. Like a lot of money we keep putting into the bank, and and what can we do with that? How much time do we need? And then I stumbled on Mr. Money Mustache and went through all of his blog posts and sat down with some friends, looked at some graphs, compound interest, and then we were like, huh. And this was like 2015 or so, and we were thinking like, huh, well, this isn't going to take all that long.
Nice. So it sounds like you were starting because you were kind of running away from a job that you both didn't like.
yeah, well, I was pretty depressed, and I mean, I didn't even want to go to work anymore. Craig was, he liked his job and all of that.
Yeah, I'd wanted more time. I mean, to not have to rely on being at work was, that's just a huge plus.
And I guess also, I'm a scientist, Craig is an engineer. Since school, we just work, 12-hour days or more, weekends, short vacations, and it just burns you out.
And something I want to add too, you'd think, oh, engineer, scientist, you guys must be rolling in money. And we work at a research in university. Engineers and scientists do not make money.
Yeah.
I started out at like 35,000 a year back in 20 years ago, and I peaked at 60,000 a year. Yeah. Julia started at 40,000 a year after her PhD and has now peaked at 70,000. So those are not like big salaries at all.
Yeah, that's amazing. And the fact that you're putting away 75%, like you said, 3/4, how did you do that on salaries that were that low?
We are very conservative,
we're
overall
pretty frugal, cheap.
Yeah.
Plus also, about 20 years ago, I bought my first house. This was pre-Julia. I wanted a place that I could afford even if I lost my job. I wanted some place that I could afford even on minimum wage if something happened, because there's not really much else around the area. So I was expecting like, okay, it might be another year or something before I find an equivalent job. And maybe I move out of the area, maybe I don't. But so I bought a real dump of a house that was $60,000. So my mortgage payment was $300 a month. And that, that's including insurance, that's including tax, property tax. So
I'm guessing this wasn't last year.
No, this is 20.
Yeah, when did you buy your house?
20 years ago.
Okay.
And where we live, it's a very rural area, and we were 30 minutes outside of where the university is. And it's a real, very Appalachian rural area. So a $60,000 house is not, at the time, was not unheard of. A dump of a house at $60,000 is not unheard of.
Like we were very conscious of our situation. So when we renovated it, everything was done with, with it in mind, thinking like we cannot sell this for more than this, so we should not invest more than, So we did a lot of the work, and that saved also money. We also invested in some properties, some rentals that we also took care of the renovations.
Yeah, we've generally bought houses no one else wants.
That's incredible that you guys did DIY work. How did you learn how to do that?
My dad's a carpenter, but I've always hated working with him. I guess I've always had the concept of you do things on your own. You don't hire things out. Concrete, I actually learned concrete from Julia. Julie's from Mexico, and everything is built of concrete.
Yeah, and it's not that I know how to do it, but I've seen it done, So every time that Greg was nervous, I was like, Greg, people does this. Everybody with no education, you can do it. And he learned it.
That's incredible that you learned how to do concrete work on your own. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you bought your house for $60,000 20 years ago. You did all the DIY work yourself. Are you still living in the house now?
No. We sold it 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
We moved in town right near the university. Again,
nice.
Buying a house that no one else wanted. We bought it at a time period, especially in the town where we're at. I mean, a house is under contract in a day or two, typically. And this house had sat for 2 weeks before we put a bid on it. The only other bids the guy was getting was some pretty lowball investor offers, because the house was extremely dumpy. It sat vacant for 2 years before we bought it. But it's awesome. I mean, I spent all of COVID period working on it. And now people look at it and they're like, "Oh my gosh! Like, how'd you find this place?" We just buy the places no one wants.
And
and one of our rentals right up the street was on the market for 5 weeks with constant markdowns in pricing because it was such a dump inside.
I mean, it was bad. Like you couldn't enter there because it smelled like cat piss, and there was a red bedroom and a bright purple bedroom, and it was just bad.
A lot of people, I mean, we've heard stories of people that went to see the house and they just stop at the front door. Open the front door, look, smell, and then just walk back.
I mean,
but structurally, there was nothing wrong with the place, and it just needed a lot of, essentially cosmetic.
And the house is in private location and
great neighborhood.
Great, yeah.
You both have a talent for seeing underneath things, seeing the true potential of something, and that's incredible to me, because, like you said, people would probably just stop at the front door in most of these places. And because you have this skill of seeing underneath it, you are able to snap up these properties that nobody else wants. Why did you choose rental real estate versus just investing in the stock market?
I guess diversification, and just the idea that, properties are secure and real. Tangible, yeah. And a lot of their success depends on our input, which I've got some confidence in. I mean, I've seen how scummy some landlords can be, and they're making money. So I figure, okay, well, if you can do an absolute crap job at it and still make money, then if you're actually paying attention to what's going on, then for sure we've got to be able to win through this.
Also, the properties we have been careful about choosing them like in university towns, walking distance. So, our tenants, we know, we have a pool of tenants that we can trust,
Yeah, I think vacancy is never really a concern with us.
Yeah, and like one of our rentals, like the town that is at, like we know that if we need to sell, it will sell within 5 days. We will have an offer.
You're right. Whenever you buy in a university town, you've got a pool of renters there all year long almost. So what do you do during the summertime though?
We do yearly contracts.
Yeah, and generally they're not students.
No,
not undergrads at least. I mean, they're graduate students. They're moving in and they're going to be staying there. They don't go somewhere else in the summer.
Do you ever get teachers?
Yeah. I mean, not everyone is a student. I mean, there'll either be graduate students. Maybe one's a graduate. If it's a couple, maybe one of them's a graduate student. The other one's working full time. Maybe it's a family in the house up the street from us. It's a 4-bedroom house. There's a married couple with 3 kids. So it's not clearly necessarily just a student rental market.
And we don't rent to the first person, that applies. We do, a set of interviews and yeah.
What are your standards for finding renters? I think that's a question that a lot of us who maybe might just be starting out in rental properties. I tried doing rentals and I was not very good at it because I was a little too nice, I feel like, and I got some renters in my places that were not so great because I didn't really do my due diligence. So what do you look for and how do you screen your tenants?
We've liked advertising on Zillow. Zillow has like an included, package where they can submit applications through, and background check is included, and it's kind of nice too because they pay a set like $30 fee or something like that, and it covers them for a full month. Even if they put an application in and they don't get the house that we've got, still have other choices they could still apply to without having $30 wasted. Yeah, we like using Zillow. Plus, in general, our area just has so many people looking for housing that we'll put the ad up, and then within about a 2-day time period, we've got at least 50 people that have asked about the house. They're not all great and serious, but out of those 50, there's probably 10 who look like they could be compatible, and then we'll show the house to about 5. Once we show the house, and this is without an application, we'll set up a time with the current tenants, and we'll have 30-minute slots where we bring couples through one at a time. And so within about 2 hours, 3 hours, got everyone who we think would be good candidates. They'll have seen the house. We'll get to talk to them in person. At this point, they still haven't actually put a formal application in. We've done some back and forth on emails and phone call, and so I've got a pretty good idea of who they might be without formally doing an application. And then we'll set up our list, top choice, and ask them if they want the place. And that's generally worked out pretty well. We've had good tenants, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the years we've been doing it, I'd say there's only been 1 or 2 couples that we probably regretted renting to, but no major disasters.
Yes.
Why do you regret renting to them?
Well, what we have learned is that everybody that is going to live in the house, we want them in the contract. Because otherwise you go in the situation where there is a lot of switch of people and then things go bad.
And also people that have lived together previously. New couples don't work out half the time.
Yeah. And if they have pets, we want to meet the pets in the interview because that makes all the difference, Overall, we just try to look consistency in their stories because we have encountered people that changes the story as you interview them. Like, story keeps changing, and so if that happens, we just, move away because those are potential problems.
If you talk to a couple separately, you'll get a different story from one versus the other on the various things.
I think it's really good for people to know this because a lot of folks in the financial independence community are considering real estate, right? And a lot of us will probably self-manage. And it's good to know kind of the underbelly of what being a landlord is like, that these kinds of things can happen where people, are not fully honest. And of course, we always want to assume the best intentions of people. But I personally moved away from real estate investing, at least being like a landlord, for that reason, because it just felt like it was a lot to manage and having to determine whether or not somebody's going to be a good tenant. I just didn't feel like I was very good at that. And so I decided to just do investing in the stock market. And so it sounds like you guys have a really amazing system for determining whether or not somebody's going to be a good tenant. And I think a lot of people could learn a lot from your process. So thank you very much for sharing.
We like to buy properties where we will live, and that way we can identify with our tenants, we can communicate openly. I think that's important, because we learn from investors, okay, if you want to make money, you buy the very bad properties and you just make them safe. So we like to be able to identify with our tenants and, have an open communication.
Well, it sounds like your tenants are lucky to have you as landlords. All right, I want to move forward and talk a little bit about post-FI, what your life looks like and what the other side is like for you, and describe like a Tuesday where most of us are getting up, brushing our teeth, going to work, working 9 to 5, coming home. What are you guys doing on like a Tuesday?
I get up in the morning a little bit before Julia. I get her up and going so she gets to work. So I make her smoothie, get tea in her thermos bottle, get her out the door. And then the rest of the day for me is kind of varied depending on what's going on. I still work a little bit at the university, very limited. I'm averaging maybe like 5 hours a week. So there might be a day where I go into work, in the morning while Julia's at work. Otherwise, maybe there's some house project. We always have a whole lot of various house projects at the house we live in, things that we're looking to get done. So maybe I'm working on something there. Maybe there's something that needs to be done at a rental house. I help out on the Appalachian Trail, maintain the trail, or other, special projects they might have. Maybe I go out and do something with them. Friends of ours have a farm in town. So sometimes I help with that, process ducks and chickens, maybe help out with some of their equipment if something breaks.
You do the finances of the house.
Julia, when you retire, which is supposed to be later this year, correct?
I mean, it can be any moment. For me, like, I'm really struggling to figure out how I'm going to keep my mind busy. There's a lot, I'm having limitations to work, a lot of repetitive motion syndrome. So I drive crazy if I'm just at home doing nothing. So I do some exercise and I have some like hobbies, but I really need to think about what is next.
How are you thinking about what's next? What kinds of things are you doing to try and figure out what you want to do next? Do you have any strategies?
I don't, I have some like a part-time job options in mind, but I'm not actively looking for that. Ideally, I just want to relax and plan my vacations and do my painting and learn my piano, that, activities that I never finish. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be time for more than that. And as of to now, I already read a lot of sci-fi, so I don't want to read more. I don't think that's healthy. So I really need to figure out how I'm going to use my extra time.
It's one of those conundrums with anybody who retires, even people who are 65, 70 retiring. There are statistics out there that say that once you stop working, a lot of the times the depression levels go up because they don't have that same routine or that same sense of purpose doing the same thing every day. So I think it's very important to find what your purpose is going to be on the other side. So I think you're really smart in thinking about that now and thinking about what that's going to look like. Although it sounds like you have some incredible hobbies like painting and the piano. I mean, that right there, those could take up so much time, especially if you decide to do anything with it, like become a version of Bob Ross, who knows, where you're painting on camera. That sounds like a really exciting life, and I'm really looking forward to it for you. Let's talk a little bit about your strategy for reaching financial independence. So you said you found this movement in 2015. At that time, did you already have real estate that you had invested in and already had investments?
Well, at that point, that's when we really started looking at how much money we spend. We had an idea because we knew how much overall went into savings, and therefore the rest of it we must be spending on stuff, but didn't really have it nailed down. So that's when I first went through and did just a full 12-month, analysis, going through all the credit card statements and everything that came out of the bank account. And then we realized, there's this particular restaurant that we used to go to. We used to go there like probably 3 times a month, maybe 4 times a month. So out of our $30,000 we would spend a year, like 5 or 6,000 was at that single restaurant. And then we just kind of realized, like, wow, we need to do something about this. And so we kind of cut down our restaurant budget a little bit. And most of it was just kind of eye-opening, what stuff was discretionary, what stuff was mandatory. And then we really started prioritizing, because both of us work in the university, and we had this savings option that's called a 457B. It's kind of like a 401k or 403B. And, no one really talks about it, and we had no idea what it was previously. And it wasn't until I started reading up on all the different investment options and realized, we've got this whole other avenue of tax-deferred savings that we can be putting money into. So we really started optimizing, I guess, where we're allocating our funds. We also changed our health savings account around. We were on a pretty nice, healthcare plan, through the university, which costs a decent amount in premiums per month. And, we neither of us at the time were really going to the doctor that much. And we were kind of realizing too, even if we went to the doctor, the amount that we spend per month on our insurance premium, we could just spend essentially out of pocket, go into a high deductible health plan, and then have money we could put into health savings account. And so we switched that around as well. So a lot of it was fine tuning, but generally, even before making a real strategy, we just didn't spend that much, and we each made reasonable salaries. So spend $30,000 a year and we had an income of, 100 to up to say like 120 a year, I guess maybe.
Wow, that's a huge savings rate. That's incredible. And so you were doing this before you even knew about financial independence.
Yeah.
We never really spend money in like clothing we do like to travel, but I think
Even that we do pretty cheap
we
as
do pretty
well.
cheap.
Yeah, an international vacation might cost $2,000 to
$3.
$4,000 thereabouts for us for a week or so,
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks.
That's incredible. Do you use miles or travel hacking?
Yeah, well, I'll sign up for credit cards and try to get bonus points. So we'll fly with that, and then
Track
places we
flights.
stay, like we, tracking the flights as well, like to just get, them at the either cheapest rate or least number of points. But we usually stay at relatively cheap places. We'll eat at the markets or something, or if we're going to stay at a place for an extended period of time, then get a place that has a kitchen so we cook our own, most of our own meals.
We still do a lot of like a side visits and have some fancy dinners, and we just don't spend in junk food or those kind of things that once they accumulate, is significant.
I'm very curious about what drove you to save that much money. It's not the typical advice you hear, right? Mostly you hear, save 10 to 15% in your retirement account, maybe 5% for your emergency fund, and then spend the rest of it. So is there like a motivation behind the saving prior to finding financial independence?
No, I think we just were used to not spending money.
Yeah. So
we just always grew up not having much of it. And
not having much of it, being students, and then living as students until the point we got married.
Yeah.
And also something that, at least for me, like really changed my view of how money works. I had this class in a college called like engineering economics, and how to do the cost benefit of everything. And for me, that was eye-opening. Like, we really think about, where is the money going? Like, for even the simplest thing at the store, like we will have arguments like what is cheaper and why, and it's like a lifestyle. We have done it since I know you, Greg.
I applaud you both. I think to all of the spenders in the audience listening, we are all very jealous. I am a spender, so I am very jealous of you. But one question I have is, once you reach complete financial independence and you're both retired, are you going to kick up the spending at all? Are you going to keep it low, or do you have any big plans with the money, or do you want to keep it as is?
I don't think it's going to change much. The only thing that right now kind of stop us to do some traveling that we want to do is our dogs. So because they are, we cannot leave them for very long. But once we do those specific trips, I think life will just, our life's expenses will keep pretty much as they are.
Yeah, and there's some things too that so once Julie doesn't have like a certain amount of vacation time that she is limited to, or feels obligated to go back to work or whatnot, and also once maybe once our dogs aren't around anymore, we were talking about, because my wife Julie is from Mexico, talking about maybe spending a few months at a time there in Mexico, maybe spend a month or two at a time up in Canada, just spend more time, extended time traveling around. There's someone that I had heard of who spends time at national parks, for like 4 months or so in the summer, spring, summer, fall period. And I would love to do that, like work in a national park, in your free time, kind of go off and do hikes and whatnot. You're still getting paid and you're getting a place to live. You might not save all that much money, but you're not spending anything, as it is, like with my wife still working, I have a pretty decent amount of freedom. And most of the stuff I like to do is activity-based, service-based, helping people out kind of stuff. But it's all local, we like in town here, because that way when she's back from work, lunch is on the table, or dinner's ready. Yeah, once we both, can spend as much time as we want doing whatever we want, then I'm kind of looking forward to just having the freedom to not have a schedule.
That sounds so great. I do also love that you work on improving the trails in your area. I remember you said that earlier, and I wanted to just commend you for that. That's something that my partner and I would love to do one day. Is he was like, I would love to just work for a national park, like you said, or be some sort of tour guide in the national park. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about if you guys have any current struggles right now. So is there anything on your FIRE journey or your financial independence journey that you are struggling with right now?
I think the only thing is just finding a plan for Julia after she's done.
Yeah,
I think that's the only struggle.
that is the struggle. It really is, because I get obsessive, over things, and I have problems with my arm and with my hip. So there's many things I cannot do. I really need to keep my mind active more than anything. I think even the health insurance will be better, isn't it, after I stop working?
Yeah, I think we'll actually have a better health insurance plan afterwards. The subsidy, for ACA plans are based on your income, and so ours should be quite low to where, our plan will essentially be completely subsidized. That's assuming going forward everything stays as it is.
And if it's not, even in the last 2 years, I've been traveling to Mexico to get like surgeries and major things done.
And the medical care is so much better.
So much better. And last time I went there, and in 3 weeks I came back with my nose, surgery. I have a septoplasty, and I don't think I will have an appointment here yet.
Yeah, and getting it here would probably bankrupt you. Okay, so current struggle is finding a plan for Julia, and then you talked about the healthcare, but you actually think it's going to be better once everything is done because you will be getting the subsidies. So that's amazing. Yeah, those subsidies are great. I'm so glad that they exist and that we can take advantage of them as a community because we do spend so little. Okay, so what are your current wins?
Not having to worry about working for the money, the stress, like in my case, because I came in an exchange visa, like during all of the transition to have the residency, I had this constant struggle where I could not spend a day without employment. So that's very stressing. And then having to worry about working to pay your mortgage and, that on top of all of your career stress. So not having to worry about making money, that, you sleep better every night. You know that anytime you can just change your career path or stop working. And I think that has been huge for me.
Yeah, I agree. Just the security. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always love the phrase FU money. And I know what everybody says that means, but to me, I prefer the Freedom Unlimited version of FU because it gives you options. You have options when you are financially independent. And even when you haven't reached financial independence, if you even have a year's worth of your salary saved up, it gives you so many more options to, get out of a toxic workplace or to, work part-time somewhere for a little while or take a sabbatical or travel for a year. I think everybody who's on the financial independence path, even if early retirement is not the goal, is going to find it beneficial for that exact reason. Final question is, what is a life hack, recommendation, or learning that you can share with the community?
The biggest, at least specific to our case, is involving housing. The houses generally that we bought are houses that no one else has wanted. And, I come from a big do-it-yourself background, but not with a huge amount of experience of my own. So in some ways, especially the first house that I bought, it was kind of nice having a house that you can't screw up any more than it already is. So even if I got something wrong, like I could redo it, or it wasn't going to make that big of a deal, like it wasn't that big of a problem if I didn't get it right the first time. I could tear it out, I could do it again. The house was not going to be any worse condition than where it was originally. And, like I said, the houses that we've bought for the most part are houses that no one else has wanted. And, we bought in times where, there is really tight housing market, and houses are on are under contract within a day or two. And somehow, even with that, two of our houses that we bought, one was after 2 weeks, one was after 5 weeks of being on the market because no one else wanted them. People they want a house that's ready to move in. And as long as you have the patience to just tolerate whatever condition it's currently at and spend some time, doing it yourself or, then that could be a huge win, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that part where you said that you buy houses that are so bad that you can't possibly screw it up more. I mean, that's fantastic. That's actually incredibly wise. So I love that. And Julia, what about you? What is a learning or
Uh,
recommendation or life hack you could
well,
share?
I think for me, coming from other country, like I have seen a lot of waste in the US. I think if people are just a little bit more conscious about basic things, like only buy what you eat or only buy what you are going to use, and having in mind everything you throw away is your money, is your time, is your life. I think that's can change the life of a lot of people.
Wow, that was really deep. Everything that you throw away is your money and your life. Very well said. And yeah, there is so much waste in this country, and it comes in the form of things like you said, buying too much food and having a packed fridge and then things rot, or fast fashion where you buy a piece of clothing for $10 and it falls apart in 2 days and then you have to buy more. I mean, it's incredible how much that happens in this country. And I think you're so right that if we can just take a little bit of time to be more thoughtful about what we spend our money on and what we're actually going to use, and use that reduce, reuse, recycle mantra in our lives more consistently, I think it's just going to make the world a better place. So really well said, Julia. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think that's a wrap. I think we can end it there. And thank you so much for being here. This was great. Thank you for being my first guest, and thank you for stumbling through this with me. All right, well, that's Craig and Julia, everybody. That's a wrap. After the interview, Craig and Julia had a couple of follow-ups they wanted me to include with the episode. Here's what they said. The 75% savings rate was actually just for a few peak years when each of them were making $60,000 salaries. It was probably more like 50 to 65% most of the rest of the time. Craig's full-time working career was around 17 years, and Julia's will be about 12. They spend about $45,000 now, as opposed to the $30,000 a few years ago at a prior residence. Their new mortgage adds about $10,000 a year, plus inflation happened. Julia is now working for somebody she respects and enjoys. When they first looked into fire, she had a very different kind of boss. They were actually only spending $3,000 annually at their favorite restaurant, not $5,000. Thanks for listening to the EverydayFI podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe in your favorite podcast player and leave a review. I love hearing from you. If you want more, follow me on Instagram at @alatemoney, where I post daily insights on how to reach financial independence. See you next time as we continue to go down the path to financial freedom.